Good evening, Dr. Kemper. I hope this video found you doing well. Congratulations on the retirement, by the way. I heard that you were retired and I'm happy for you. Congratulations on that. I'd like to thank you for everything that you've taught me since I've been here at Point. I've been to class multiple times and I've learned a lot of different stuff through you and your classes and all the readings that I've had to do while taking your classes. I'm pretty sure that I can use those things in my career, throughout my career, and it essentially made me a better person, a better employee, a better leader in the long haul. And I look forward to being able to elevate my game due to what I've learned in this class. So we can start off. The initial thoughts on leadership paper that we wrote at the beginning of the semester. I read back through that before making this PowerPoint, and I got some tips from it, some pointers. My original thoughts were leaders bring it every day. There are no days off. That I found out that to be true, but in the meantime, there's some situations where you don't have to bring it. You have people under you, you have people under you and they can bring it for you to where you don't have to be the one making decisions at all time. I learned that recently in the books that we've read. Leaders are hard workers. I still think that's a true statement. I still stand by that statement. You gotta be a hard worker. I believe to achieve anything in life, nothing worth achieving is gonna be handed to you for free, and I'm a firm believer in that. Leaders are not scared to work. I don't know if I'll ever change my thought on that, because if I have a leader of someone that's leading me and he's scared to work, I don't really think he's a leader. I think he's just a boss. I think he's just somebody pointing fingers and telling people what to do. More or less, that's not a leader. He's in a leadership role, but in my eyes, I don't believe he is qualified to be a leader. Some more of my thoughts. All eyes are on the leader. I believe that's firm and true, but in some scenarios, like the scenario earlier, where if you pass it on to someone else, like a different department within your company, the eyes aren't on you in that situation because you've passed the role down to someone else. Leaders are held to a higher standard. I believe this is true because as a leader, you're supposed to set the example. You're supposed to be the role model for what everyone's supposed to want, what everybody's supposed to strive to be like. And I think you are held to a higher standard just for that reason. I think it may be just a personal thing that me personally as a leader, I hold myself to a higher standard just because I know that what I'm doing with people watching me is going to give good vibes or bad vibes. And you always want to give the good and show people that the good side of you and that you're working hard and that you are a leader. And my final bullet is good leaders attract hard workers. And I believe that's true. Like I said, I believe a good leader is a hard worker. So I guess you say you are what you attract, or you attract what you are. A good leader, somebody sees a good leader, says, hey, that guy, he's working. He's a hard worker. I like the way he's leading those guys, the way he's taking charge of controlling things. And I want to work for that guy just so I can get better as a worker, because I can roll or model after him. And that ultimately pushes me to be a better worker in the long term. So we can start with the first book. Some things I learned in the first book that we read this semester, Leaders Eat Last. Leadership is something that you don't learn in the classroom. It's not something that you can teach necessarily in the classroom, and it's not measured off what you've done in the classroom. It's not measured off A honor roll, B honor roll, and none of that. It's who you are, I believe. Not all leaders are straight A students. Not all leaders are failing out of school, but there's some of both. Some leaders dropped out of high school and created multi-billion-dollar companies, and some leaders fail or passed all classes, graduated superior in their class throughout college, and they're good leaders. It comes in all shapes, sorts, and forms, but just because what you did in the classroom does not translate to becoming a leader. Another thing I learned in the book, Leaders Eat Last, is the parent's mood in a child's life is more important than I ever thought it would be, or more than I've ever thought about. And honestly, never really thought about that concept, but it makes sense the more I read about it. your kid comes, or if you come home from work and you're in a bad mood, you're mad, you're hollering and cussing and fighting, and your kid sees that, that's not good. That's not healthy for them. That's not something that they need to see every day because they're kids. They don't need to witness that, to be around that. If you want to do that, go somewhere else, get away from the kids. Don't be doing it in front of the kids because they're watching you every move. Like, you are their leader. You're ultimately, you lead them in the direction they want to go. And if you are just doing it in a bad way, that's setting bad examples, and it's just going to trickle down. And one day they could potentially be in the same spot you are, just because that's what they know, that's what they're familiar with, and that's not good for the kids to see in the long run, just for that aspect. And like I said, it's not a doable thing all the times. You're gonna have bad days as a parent, or as parents, you're gonna argue and you're not gonna have the best days, and there's gonna be tough days, but there's always a time and a place for the situations, and then always just show the kids the positive sides and not the negative sides, because they need the positivity, because they're new, they're learning, and that's what they need to be brought up around. So like I stated, I mean, if you're going to do anything, go out of sight, out of mind. If they can't hear you, that's all good. That's the better it is. And ultimately, it's just going to help the kid in the long run, no matter what y'all have going on in your life. Some other things I learned throughout this class, or throughout this book, Leaders Eat Last, is you get to be a leader, you have to lead yourself first. If you are someone that doesn't lead by example, or if you don't set positive role models or set positive roles and become a positive model for people, then you're not really leading. You're just teaching and talking, and people don't respect that. The next thing is choose positivity, no matter what the situation is or how bad the situation is. Always choose positivity, because being negative doesn't help anything. It hasn't helped anything in any of the situations I've ever been in. I can think of multiple times during baseball games where I was negative, or I seen negativity, and that led to bad things, and it ultimately just piles up and it keeps getting worse and worse, and then it's going to bite you regardless. And one thing you need to do is become a good critical thinker. You got to think outside the box at times. You can't stay within the box. You got to think of any solution and all solutions to fix whatever situation it is that you're going through in that moment. Also, a big part of the Leaders Eat Last was talking about the kids, or not necessarily kids, but humans in general, as we have the 4 chemicals that help control our moods and our feelings and our thoughts for our everyday life. Your 4 chemicals, your endorphins, your dopamine, your serotonin, and your oxytocin. Your endorphins and your dopamine, they put it at a broad spectrum. They help us survive and get things done. They allow us to learn and understand and cope with situations, whatever we're feeling in the situation, and they help us in those regards. Serotonin and your oxytocin, they both help work well with others, and they help build trust with others. Serotonin, as you learn and develop with people, the serotonin is released, and that bond is formed, and you become more comfortable around them, and that ultimately leads to building the trust. Our next book is How to Lead When You're Not in Charge. Leaders, one thing I learned throughout that book is leaders are not only people who can transform a company. Yes, in cases that will work and that has worked, but not all cases will that work. You can be the janitor in the company and have an input in whatever situation. You can still work and help develop the company in some way, shape, or form. Authority is irrelevant. Like I said, the janitor or the people at the bottom of the list can have input and say so in the company, and they can have just as much input as the boss or the CEO in that company. The next point, the closer you are to the problem, the more likely you are to solve it. That's a broad term, a broad way to put it. If you are far away from the term or the problem or the situation, then you technically you don't know the situation. You're kind of just far out. You don't know the wrongs, the rights, of the ins or the outs of any part of that problem. And the closer you get to it, the more work you put in to solve that problem, and the closer you are, the better it's going to be. some of the next things I learned in this book, have a reason to change things and don't change just because. If you're going in there changing a situation or changing a company or a business for no reason, then it's pointless. You don't have a reason to do that, so you shouldn't do that. Always have a reason for what you're doing. Don't go into a situation blind, because that just ultimately will cause more problems in the long run. And like piggybacking off that, don't change something to make it worse. It's got to be better. If you're going to change it, then if it's worse when you change it, then why did you change it in the first place? Or maybe you can adapt and work with that situation to make it better. But ultimately, if you're going to change something, make sure you change it for the better. Don't force it. If it's not working right, don't force it. You don't have to make a change happen in the organization at that instant. Don't force anything. It's going to work out regardless in the end. And the next set of books that we read, Drive. I'll start off with one of the main things that popped off for me was the carrot and the stick analogy. In this analogy, the carrot, which is your reward, is what you're striving to get or what you want in the end, and the stick is the punishment from the outcome of your situation. Obviously, we don't want the stick; we all want the carrots, and that should be what we strive for in the end, is to reach our goal and to achieve those goals. There's two types of motivation. As a human, we have extrinsic motivation, which is an external satisfaction, such as money or grades or even fashion, I guess you could say. Those things are all temporary. They're not here forever. Your grades aren't forever. I mean, you're gonna have money forever, but it's not forever. It's not going to completely satisfy you. It's just a temporary satisfaction that's not going to help ultimately in the long run. The next type of satisfaction is intrinsic satisfaction. Intrinsic satisfaction comes from within. These are things like you worked hard on a project, you worked hard on a goal or achieving a goal. And once you achieve that goal, you got a pat on the back, a good job. And you didn't do it for anyone but yourself, because you wanted to feel the accomplishment and what it felt like to achieve the goal that you set out to achieve. An example of intrinsic satisfaction can be simple as a kid playing with a toy. I don't know any kids that get paid to play with toys. If they're playing with a toy, it's because they want to play with a toy. They want to have the fun, the satisfaction of playing with that toy, and that's ultimately what's best for them in that moment. As being a kid, is, hey, I want to have fun. I want to play with this toy. I want to play with my friends or something like that. And that's going to be a intrinsic satisfaction, and it helps you. I mean, you just feel better because you're doing it for yourself and for no other reason. There's 3 stages to the intrinsic satisfaction. The first one's it's autonomy. What autonomy is basically, you got to be self-driven. Have a goal, and your drive in your body should allow you to focus on getting to that goal and achieving it in the end. And you've got to want it. If you don't want something, then why are you doing it? If you don't want to achieve a goal, then why are you doing it? It makes no sense if you don't have a goal, if you're not driven to accomplish that goal or a reason to accomplish that goal. The second stage is mastery. Once you figure out what you do or what you want to do, my situation, I can relate to baseball. I want to hit a home run every time I get up to the plate. Now, is that possible? No, it's not. In MLB, if you hit 3 out of 10 home run, or if you get on base 3 out of 10 times, that's a 300 batting average, and you can make the Hall of Fame just for getting on base 3 out of 10 times. But so realistically, hitting a home run 10 out of 10 times is probably not going to happen. But it's not that you don't hit a home run every time. It's the practice that leads you up to working and getting to where you can hit a home run more consistently and better and easily. And that's what happens once you deliberately repeat it. Your swing, once you repeat your mechanics, you reap what you sow. Basically, you get out what you put in. You put in the hard work. You repeatedly, or deliberately repeat your motions, and you'll be paid, or you will be rewarded in the end. And this kind of piggybacks off autonomy, but purpose. You gotta have a purpose for whatever you're doing. You can't just go out there and do it just because someone else is doing it. You got to have a reason you're doing something. Like the reason I go to the baseball cages is to get better. So I know I don't go in there just to go to the batting cages and look at the cages. I have a reason every time I go in there, and that's what you got to have. That should be your purpose. You have a purpose in everything. The next book is Predictable Success, and a few things that I learned in Predictable Success was you start with 3 stages, or you don't start with 3 stages, but in the beginning of a business, you normally, all businesses go through these stages, and the first one is the early stage, the early struggle. And this early struggle is basically figuring out if what you're selling, your product or your service, is actually getting sold. If it's just, if you're cooking food and no one's eating the food, then you're just wasting money, you're losing money, and that's not going to lead to a successful business. So once you get through the early struggle, once you learn that people are buying your product and you begin to make profit, then that's whenever it starts to get fun. That's whenever you transition to the fun stage. Throughout the fun stage, you basically you watch your company grow, your business grow. Say you own a restaurant and you start adding more and more things to your menu, you start getting more and more customers, and it's literally fun to watch. Like it's kind of like watching a kid grow up. The smarter they get, it's just fun to watch. And of course, with all good things, there's got to be some bad. So the next stage is your whitewater stage, and when I think of whitewater, I think of kind of like rough, throwing a little kayak or boat or whatever it is in it, throwing it around, and it's not smooth, it's not calm. So what your whitewater stage actually is basically your demand beats your supply. If people want 100 hamburgers, but you can only put out 50, then that's kind of a problem. You run into an issue, and ultimately you're going to have to expand your business, to expand your company to grow to meet the demand. And if you can't do that, most businesses don't end up doing well, because I mean, you go out of business, you're losing money, you can't keep up with the demand, and that's not good for the company in the long run. You got to beat the whitewater stage to be a successful business. You have to beat it. You have to get through those tough times, that tough point. You gotta learn to overcome and adapt. You gotta adapt to your situation, overcome the tough times that you're going through as a company, and learn from those situations. Some ways that you can beat the whitewater stage, like I mentioned earlier in the video, take the task off your shoulders. If you're the CEO of a company, and all the commands come from you, go through you, that's got to get old. That's tiring. That's hectic. Um, Hire people to do those things for you, like hire financial people or accounting people or people that can do those sides of the business for you, where you don't have that responsibility anymore. It takes some pressure off your shoulders, and that makes the business run more fluid, more fluent, and ultimately that's how a successful company becomes successful. They have multiple people helping out, multiple people working together, and it all comes together in the end, and it helps, and the business is successful. Also, you can't be the one making the decisions all the time. Yes, you're the boss, you're in charge, you're the leader, but you don't have to make every decision. Not all of them have to come through you. You can have people that you hire that can make the decisions just as well, or just as easy as you can, and they can do that for you. That's just one extra thing that takes the pressure off your shoulders. The next two thing, or the next part of this book, you gotta install systems. You gotta install the data, debate, decide, defer system. And what this system is you collect your data, say the first month or so, the first year a company's been in business. You take the data, analyze it, go through it with your team, look at what the good things are, what the bad things are, if you made money, if you lost money, if you broke even, and whatnot. And then you basically debate it. You go over it as a team, talk about it, whatever y'all think or y'all agree needs to happen. Y'all agree on it, make it happen. That's when you decide. You got to decide what to do. And ultimately, if you can't come to a decision, then you just defer it. You defer it down the line to a different company or a different part of the company, and they ultimately will make a decision in the future, whatever they decide to do. Another good big thing is take risk 20% of the time. That's not 100% of the time. That's not all right. That's not all day. That's just one, maybe 2 or 3 times out of the day. Take a risk. If it don't have to be excessive risk, it can just be a risk in general, because not all things are going to be given to you for free or easily. You got to take risk. You gotta go for it. If you think you can get it, go for it. Take that risk, but just make sure you're not doing it all the time, because that can get expensive. One big thing that I read from, or I learned in this book, and I also known this about Google, but they allow their employees to be creative. So an hour or two out of the day, they allow their employees to go work on different parts of different projects, whatever that employee wants. And it just allows them to be creative, to be free. And in the end, that's how you allow or make your employees happy. And when they're happy, they're going to work hard. They're going to do good work for you just because they're happy and they're treated right. And that's how people want to be treated. And that's going to help you out in the long run, ultimately. Overall, the thoughts from this class, like I said, the 4 books, they've taught a lot. I learned a lot of new information, a lot of helpful tips, a lot of things I plan to implement throughout my career as a businessman or whatever my career is. I plan on using all these techniques and situations and ideas and plans to help my business and my company one day, because ultimately that's what I plan on doing, or that's what I want to do, is help my company be successful, whether it's my personal company or the company I work for, whatever it is. I just want to be successful. And with the things that I've learned throughout these books and this class and these classes, I believe I'll be successful. Shouldn't have anything to worry about. Also, I gotta continue to be a better leader. Like I said, the information I learned, it's been helpful. I've learned things how to help me and tips and pointers, and I just gotta keep implementing it. Got to work on it. Got to practice it. It's the mastery part. I've got to deliberately repeat being a good leader and doing all the right things, and then it'll become second nature. And it's like doing it's nothing. It'll be like clockwork then. Always got to work hard and always got to learn new material, because if you're not learning, you're getting left in the behind or in the dust. Thank you, Dr. Kemper. I appreciate your time. God bless.